So today is Saturday, January 25th, and here we are at Endless Path Zendo, and I'd like to, as someone who spent some years writing books, and may still continue to write books, I have a tendency, as most writers do, to rewrite my earlier work. It's always nice to see things getting clearer. And so this Teisho is something I spent many hours actually this week rewriting from a couple of years ago. And the title is, Are Bodhisattvas Really Real? So Buddhism speaks of Bodhisattvas, or wisdom beings. The name is quite literal. In Sanskrit, Bodhi means wisdom, and Sattva, being, wisdom being. Wisdom beings. These are said to be the countless spiritually maturing, growing up, and grown-up beings throughout the universe, dedicated to the path of dropping self-centeredness, an ultimately unreal position, and attaining the way of truthful, which means selfless, and so wise and compassionate being and doing. The Buddha in the Jataka tales is the Bodhisattva, that is someone on his personal path of evolution to the complete realization of innate Buddhahood. So the Buddha in the Jatakas is always referred to as the Bodhisattva with a capital B because it's who he is. However, Bodhisattva is not capitalized. There are countless Bodhisattvas according to Buddhist tradition. So there he is in the Jatakas, life after life, evolving. But my question here is still, where is he going? It's exactly at this point that an advanced bodhisattva might have challenged him about this progressive path of evolving practice. Mara is the tempter or distractor, the one who keeps messing up our focus, filling our minds with all kinds of distractions when we sit down to do zazen. As there are countless bodhisattvas through the universe, there are likewise said to be countless maras. However, thanks to the Vimalakirti Sutra, we also know that all such maras may actually themselves be advanced bodhisattvas, whose job it is to test the less mature bodhisattvas. Bah! Not enough, they proclaim. Not enough yet. Keep going. At the same time, they add, just this, right now, just this, do you see? Then, with the black piercing eyes of a devil, to quote Wu Men, they sit watching us younger bodhisattvas squirm as we try to grasp the living truth. Very tricky, these maras. So, why didn't Mara challenge the bodhisattva in the Jatakas? Why didn't he say, hold on, where are you hurrying off to, life after Jataka life? Where do you think you're going? What do you think rather you're going to get that you don't already have? In Shobogenzo, section 6, this very mind is Buddha, Dogen insists, hold on one sec, insists that this very mind, not thought, not intellect, but this very mind, right now, not thousands of lives in the future, is Shakyamuni Buddha. At the same time, Dogen won't let us escape into lazy views like, great, I don't have to do a thing, I'm a Buddha. No. As Zen students, we will be challenged on where we are going early on in our koan curriculum. When we take up the important koan of Baichang, Japanese would be Yakujo's, Baichang's Fox, the second koan of the Mumenkan, Gateless Barrier, koan collection. The case includes several challenges on this very point. Wang Bo asks his teacher, Baichang, what if the abbot, whose wrong answer turned him into a fox for 500 lives, had given right answers each time? What would have happened then? And Wu Men's commentary to the case states that the ex-abbot lived all those 500 fox lives as lives of grace. How? How could that be? Not as a human being, fell into this state of being a fox for 500 lives. How did he live those lives as lives of grace? Well, this thing about Mara is that he never seems to be there when you might want him, and is always, always turning up to mess with your practice when you don't. When the Buddha-to-be is finally challenged by Mara on this point, are you ready? I mean, don't you have more to do? He's mature and he's ready. He doesn't get sucked in, but heads Mara off at the paths with one simple move that ends the whole show. He simply touches the earth. That's it. Here, right here. This is it. Just this. Nonetheless, though that is the truth, right here, right now, there are nonetheless stages to ongoing practice. Understanding, commitment, and embodiment all evolve. Jataka tales are the record of one particular Bodhisattva's, our own Shakyamuni Buddha's, exertions on his path of compassionate and skillfully evolving practice. They show him working through human, non-human, and superhuman lives toward the complete actualization of his and our own vast and mysterious potential, the potential of mind itself, the mind that sees colors with the eyes, hears these words with the ears, feels the pain in the knees, this very mind. According to Mahayana, literally great way, Maha, great, Yana, way, Buddhist tradition, absolutely profound selfless wisdom is already intrinsic to every atom, bug, rock, tree, star, animal, and person. It is already here and has been so from the beginning. Hakuin Zenji makes this the opening of his Zazen Wasan song in praise of Zazen. From the very beginning, all beings are Buddha. Yet, as Zen tradition makes clear, and as Dogen takes pains to point out again and again, unless we do the work of actually practicing realization, our intrinsic enlightenment remains unconscious to us, even as it underlies all we think, feel, sense, and do. It is asleep, remaining only as a potential, not yet awake and functioning. The very beginning that Hakuin refers to is not simply a time distant in time or space. It is here, the very beginning, with this thought, this breath, this count, this koan point. This is the very beginning. Dogen, in the superb brief section of Shobo Genzo titled Genjo Koan, where actualizing the fundamental point, writes, "Do not suppose that what you realize becomes your knowledge and is grasped by your consciousness. Although actualized immediately, the inconceivable may not be apparent. Its appearance is beyond your knowledge." Zen Master Baoch of Mount Mayu was fanning himself. A monk approached and said, "Master, the nature of wind is permanent, and there is no place it does not reach. Why then do you fan yourself?" "Although you understand that the nature of the wind is permanent," Baoch replied, "you do not understand the meaning of its reaching everywhere." "What is the meaning of its reaching everywhere?" asked the monk again. The master just kept fanning himself. The monk bowed deeply. Then Dogen continues, "The actualization of the Buddha Dharma, the vital path of its correct transmission, is like this. If you say that you do not need to fan yourself because the nature of wind is permanent, and you can have wind without fanning, you will understand neither permanence nor the nature of wind. The nature of wind is permanent. Because of that, the wind of the Buddha's house brings forth the gold of the earth and makes fragrant the cream of the long river. This was written in mid-autumn, first year of Tempuku, which is 1233, revised in the fourth year of Kencho, 1252. So that was Dogen, Interestingly, he was revising his writings as well. And this was an over 20-year period that he revised it. And this translation is from Robert Aitken and Kaz Tanahashi. So through the work of our practice realization, we can wake to it. Practice is realization. It is because the nature of wind is permanent that we fan ourselves, that we can fan ourselves. Because original mind is our nature, we can practice realization of original mind. According to the Jataka tradition, animals can be bodhisattvas, or rather, perhaps more accurately, bodhisattvas can be animals, or plants and trees. We know for real these days that dogs will run through flames to save human friends, dolphins push drowning swimmers to shore and drive off sharks circling a surfer, orcas, killer whales, have guided lost boaters through heavy fog to save harbor, octopus are intelligent and curious with distinct personalities, and that older trees protect younger family members while younger ones may help nourish and sustain more ancient ones. In the Jatakas, a parrot saves a burning forest, a deer saves many animals from hunters, a bear saves a hunter, an elephant and a lion join forces to save shipwrecked merchants, an ox takes on a mighty task to help the farmer who raised him. All are bodhisattvas. In actuality, not simply in old stories, the more we learn of animals, the more astonishing their behaviors, intelligence, and empathy appear. How similar our modern sense of animal intelligence and personality is to the way animals were already being presented in the 2,500-year-old Jataka tales. Western science is catching up to where Buddhism began. Practicing meditation and committing ourselves to an ethical life is the core of our work as beginner bodhisattvas. To help accomplish this, we renew bodhisattva vows at the end of every period of formal zazen. With our great vows for all, we remind ourselves of our own deepest life purpose and renew our commitment to be of benefit to others, human and non-human alike. The bodhisattva or wisdom being is a grown-up, someone who has matured beyond childish notions of self-centeredness and self-importance. This long process begins not by tearing down the self, but by awakening to non-duality. The 4 vows or great vows for all are our essential vows of bodhisattvic aspiration in Zen. They map out the path and clarify our determination to free all beings, not just human beings, from the sufferings caused by delusion. Feeling ourselves to be separate, we add to our own suffering and the world's. War, class division, destructive climate change, all are the result. Yet in reality, says Dogen, all beings, us included, not only have, but are self-nature. So animals, trees, rivers, grasses, mountains, insects, all join in the great vow. This is not simply kindness, it is wisdom. Without insects, there's no pollination. Without pollination, plant life withers, and we all die. Without healthy rivers, we're up the creek, and so on. We save each other. The vow is mutual. To release all beings from the separation we ourselves put on them, as well as to help others get free of the causes and effects of dualistic egocentrism, is an immense challenge. It is our first bodhisattva vow. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them all. Secondly, we understand that we can only accomplish the realization of our initial vow by being responsible to a practice of not attaching to the greed, hatred, and ignorance arising within our own minds. Eventually, we see that our habitual unconscious attachment to the idea of a permanent, separate inner self is a provisional, not absolute truth. What is it really, this self, right now, that sees colors with the eyes, hears sounds with the ears? As we free ourselves from our delusive dualism, we regain intimacy with all things. As we free ourselves, we simultaneously free others and our planet from the damaging effects of our own wrong thinking. Saving others starts in small ways. Thirdly, we vow to see the circumstances of our life as Dharma gates, opportunities through which we can, by touching base with our vast and groundless nature, mature further. It also means we vow to fulfill the terms of our formal practice. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to embody them all. Each count, each breath, each koan is a Dharma gate. Fourth, we vow to embody the unattainable way of the Buddha, that is, to follow the selfless path that leads to fulfillment. This way is unattainable because in reality, it is already us. You cannot enter a room you never left. You cannot attain a way that is already intrinsically your own being. Zen teaching makes it clear that if we mean to fulfill our deepest goals and realize our vows of awakened life, it will take effort and perseverance. We will have to practice. The good news is that with the growing dedication, insight, and determination that arises from ongoing practice, such goals can, to one degree or another, be realized. Habitual self-centeredness, the false, separated, dualistic notion of ourselves as flawed and alone in a world we never made, as Roshi Kapleau used to put it, is a kind of delusion or sickness. Sickness can be healed. Our original nature and the nature of all beings can be brought into consciousness. We don't need to add a thing to what already is. Rather, we just need to let go of what is not. Koan 87 in the Hekigan Roku, Blue Cliff Record in English, Pi and Lu in Chinese, Yunmen's medicine and sickness cure each other, states, Yunmen said, that would be Unmon in Japanese, said to his disciples, medicine and sickness cure each other. The whole earth is medicine. What is yourself? Medicine and sickness cure each other. The whole earth is medicine. What is yourself? The experience of the realization of selfless intimacy with all things, or maybe better put, not with all things, but with this breath, this koan point, this buzz of a fly, this caw of the crow, is kensho in Japanese, which simply means seeing self-nature. These days, it is usually more a glimpse than a clear, steady viewing. Yet, this glimpse is significant, shallow though it may initially be. For it is the beginning of an endless path of ongoing and deepening practice realization. In time, our self-conscious efforts give way to more relaxed and less self-willed practice. We guide, balance, and steer, but are no longer bent over the bars, red-faced, gasping for breath, pedaling furiously uphill for all we're worth. Classical Buddhist texts say that there are 50 stages to a Bodhisattva's complete evolution. There might as well be 1,000,000. Our job, regardless of numbers, is to begin anew with each round of Zazen, with each breath. Our job is to practice now, and so to touch the ground right where we are. It's said in Buddhist tradition that advanced bodhisattva mahasattvas, that is, greatly realized, greatly functioning bodhisattvas, those who are far ahead of us on the path and have been doing this work for lifetimes, are now so skillful they can appear in any form to bring aid where and whenever needed. One such great being is Manjushri, Bodhisattva of Prajna, or non-dual wisdom. He sits in the Zendo with us and shows the way of practice realization by swinging the sword of full attention that cuts through delusions, especially through the core delusion of me in here, everyone and everything else out there. From his left shoulder rises the lotus of fulfilled mind on which rests the book or scroll of Prajna Paramita, perfect wisdom. When Manjushri's delusion cutting sword swings, the selfless, non-dual wisdom that's always been here is revealed. The sword kills delusions even as it gives life. Killing self-centered delusion gives life to selfless wisdom. That's it. We don't have to add the wisdom. It's there if the delusions are taken away. Sometimes Manjushri sits at ease on a lion. Its thunderous roar wipes the mind clear and kills delusions like the sword. Its nobility and vitality overwhelm self-centered oppositions and the doubt that so many of us carry about our fundamental worth in this world. The roar of the lion wipes it all away. Manjushri has been at it so long, he was teacher, it is said, to the last 7 Buddhas. Long ago, he was already a Buddha, but gave it up to actively lend a hand to beginners like us and help all beings enter the way. Avalokitesvara, another central Mahayana Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Maha is great, Sattva is being, great being, is known as Kuan Yin in China, Kannon in Japan, Chenrezig in Tibet. Her aim, in all her various forms, is to embody pure compassion and save all beings from suffering. Sometimes he or she is shown with 1,000 hands, able to reach into any realm and bring exactly the right kind of aid. This is an astonishingly tactile image of the mind and aspiration of a bodhisattva, and the potential of a bodhisattva, the skillfulness of a bodhisattva. Avalokitesvara gained this power, the Shurangama Sutra reveals, when practicing under the guidance of the Buddha. He focused on the inquiry, who is hearing sounds? With great liberation, Avalokitesvara became the one who hears the cries of the world, the greatly compassionate one. Samanta Bahadra, or Fugen in Japanese, is a bodhisattva of compassionate action and is another exemplar of the path. Mounted on an elephant, she makes her unstoppable way through the twists and turns of life, bringing the light of compassionate action into every dark corner. In some Zendos, the 2 central bodhisattvas are Manjushri on the lion and Samanta Bahadra, or Fugen, as he or she is known in Japan, on the elephant. In fact, usually these are paired, Manjushri on the lion, Samanta Bahadra on the elephant. We actually have such up on our little altar here right now. Manjushri on the lion with the sword, holding the scroll of the Prajna Paramita, Samanta Bahadra on an elephant, holding a lotus. And gender is only provisional with bodhisattvas in the sense that there's a transformative potential to every bodhisattva. So there's a Japanese Buddhist legend drawn from a sutra and turned into a kind of folkloric story of Fugen. In Japan, Samanta Bahadra would be known as Fugen, who takes the form of a dancing girl or courtesan to awaken men to their true nature. So everything has the potential to become, as we said, a Dharma gate, depending on the intention behind it. Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are then not defined by male or female. They could take any form. Advanced bodhisattvas, it said, can appear not simply as I've described them, but in whatever form is needed. It is their art form, their play, to come forth and lend a hand. So Enin, a Japanese Buddhist monk traveling in Tang-era China, reported that when he went to Mount Wutai, sacred to the Bodhisattva Manjushri, he found that pilgrims there were kind to even the lowliest sorts of animals. They'd see a donkey and whisper to one another, "That could be Manjushri. He might have taken this form." And so they would treat that donkey with the utmost respect and reverence, just in case. In this way, whether they realized it or not, they brought the real Manjushri of their own minds forth. Wisdom is exactly compassion. Advanced Bodhisattvas, Buddhist tradition says, who can take any form to help, might surprise us with actions that look like anything but help. The storm that grounds our plane and upsets our plans could be a Bodhisattva doing his or her job. Perhaps the delay saves us from who knows what, or a Bodhisattva could be the one dialing that ringing phone, which when we pick it up, has no one on the line. Here's a true story. A young woman with a child on her hip stepped from the kitchen into the living room to answer the phone. "Hello," she said, but there was no one on the line. How irritating! Suddenly she heard a loud boom. The pressure cooker on the stove in the kitchen she'd just left hadn't been properly closed, and with great pent-up force, the lid exploded to the ceiling, spraying the room with boiling sauce. She and her child were saved from injury or death. The wrong number phone call Bodhisattva had dialed her up just in time. Now, it's not crucial to know whether Bodhisattvas are really real or not, nor can we depend on miraculous salvations if they are real. It would be silly to go around claiming, "Oh, that rude person who cut me off on the highway, making me miss my intended exit, was a Bodhisattva," or "that bee sting that put me in the hospital was really a Bodhisattva in disguise." It's not an article of belief we need to cling to. Roshi Kapleau used to say, all we really need to know to practice Zen is the recognition that impermanence is real and not simply a statement in a Buddhist book, and that Shakyamuni didn't lie and wasn't a fool when after 6 years of dedicated effort he exclaimed spontaneously, "Wonder of wonders! All beings are Buddhas fully endowed with wisdom and compassion." If he wasn't a fool and he wasn't lying, what did he mean? If we accept that he wasn't a fool or a liar, then in time we will ask ourselves, indeed we will be driven to ask ourselves, if I'm a Buddha, then where is my wisdom, my insight, my compassion, my own sense of inner peace? Why don't I see it, feel it, know it? Why don't I live from it and abide in it? And then we must ask after that, what can I do to bring about a realization in my own small way of what the Buddha himself, not a god, but a human being like me, experienced and then taught 2,500 years ago? There's the grit under our shell that can in time produce a pearl. Ultimately, to know who Bodhisattvas are, we need to know who we ourselves are. What is this self? What is this self? Where is this self? Can we find it? Where is it located? What is it that sees colors with the eyes, hears sounds with the ears? We may point to our heads or hearts and say within, but where is that? And is the self within male or female, old or young, wise or foolish? Not turning away, but looking directly into this, our freedom from anxiety, unease, and distress begins to open. Wei Ke, the second ancestor of Zen in China, was troubled. He stood in the snow before Bodhidharma's cave, begging him for help. "I have no peace of mind. Please help me," he said with some anguish. Bodhidharma didn't point to a text for Wei Ke to read. He didn't say, "Don't worry, it'll be all right. You have this nature. Be at peace, my son." No. Instead, like a skilled Dharma thief, he said, "Bring me your troubled mind, and I'll give it peace." With that answer, and with Weike's work on it, he stole Weike's confusion and pain away. When preconceptions and illusions are gone, something beyond our habitual self-oriented dreaming can appear. Bodhidharma, seen by Zen tradition as a manifestation of Avalokitesvara, Mahasattva, great Bodhisattva of compassion, actualizes this truth. This is his Bodhisattva work. In the extremity of darkness, a light may shine. Weike, though he sought and sought, could not find his own troubled mind to present it to Bodhidharma. Defeated, he confessed his failure. "I can't find it. I've sought, but I can't find it." "There," said Bodhidharma, striking when the iron was hot, "I've pacified your mind for you." Through Bodhidharma's insight and the skill arising from it, Weike came to realization. Here is where actual Zen begins, direct pointing, without reliance on a specific text. Eventually, we all walk the road seeking peace. Eventually, we all come face to face with seemingly unanswerable questions. Where is my mind? What is my mind? Who am I? Why was I born? Why am I here? Why must I die? We think we know so much. We have many fixed views and beliefs. This is true, this isn't true. This is a fact, this isn't a fact. Science has proved this, but it hasn't proved that. God is real, God isn't real. I'm a Buddhist, I'm not a Buddhist. Bodhidharma was a shaven-headed old guy who lived 1,500 years ago and brought Zen to China from India. Bodhidharma was the Bodhisattva of Avalokitesvara, or he wasn't. I have a soul. I don't have a soul. Round and round we go, and yet what we don't know is who or what we really are. We don't know the thinker of our own thoughts. But are there really bodhisattvas who can take any form and appear in any guise to help, beings whose sole purpose and joy is to help us naturally as you and I might reach back for a pillow in the night, really help us with our difficulties and help us to awaken from our delusions? Are there really such beings? Kobayashi Isa, the famous and poverty-stricken haiku poet, wrote a now famous haiku after the death of his young daughter. What he wrote was, "This dewdrop world is just a dewdrop world, and yet, that's the whole poem. Ours is a dewdrop world, fragile and temporary, and yet, its difficulties and griefs can stun us with the solidity and force of a sledgehammer wielded by a maniac. There are tragedies we can never explain or understand. There are killing fields and holocausts, earthquakes, collapsing bridges, and sinking ships. We can't escape the pain of not knowing why terrible things happen by slipping on rose-colored glasses. Clinging to beliefs, even such good beliefs as belief in great bodhisattvas, can distort our ability to see. There is a Zen saying, even gold dust in the eyes can blind. There is something better than the gold of lofty belief. It is genuine seeing, genuine intimacy. For that, we must take a step beyond all belief to what is, focusing again and again on the count, the breath, the koan. The compulsive need to repeat and continually recreate the same old inner narrative fades. We are freed by our own unremitting efforts to awake from a limiting and ultimately destructive dream. Zazen is our way of actualizing this. It is not simply a way of calming ourselves down. When we are filled with anxiety, peace, of course, is important. Yet despite this, we shouldn't go searching for bodhisattvas to save us. What we need to do is discover who bodhisattvas are and where they are by knowing who and where we are. To return to where we began, are bodhisattvas really real? Here's another true story, a personal one. Back in 1970, when Rose was pregnant with our son Jake, we were living in an old farmhouse in backwoods Pennsylvania, south of Binghamton. One day we drove into town. Rose had a dentist appointment, and while she was busy, I took off on our old VW bus to handle errands. I chanced on a gas station where sat two old gents in overalls. They also sold used cars. As I gassed up, we talked. I mentioned the upcoming birth. They looked at me. They looked at the VW, an old, unpadded, uninsulated, rattling, bare metal cargo plane of a van. You have a child coming? They mused. In their voices I now heard echoes of foghorn leghorn. Son, I say son. Well now, they said, why don't you take a look at this GMC truck? Step right over here. It was blue, solid, gleaming. Everything about it, from the massive emergency brake to the rows of thickly padded, removable, bench-type seats, proclaimed industrial strength. Take a drive, they said. I got in and drove away. Such a smooth, solid ride. I had visions of plowing with ease up the hill to the old farmhouse through deep winter snows. We lived in an old farmhouse then, backwoods Pennsylvania. Through deep winter snows, a risky, bouncing pedal to the metal feet in our current bus. And I had visions of nomadic family security. How much? I asked, heart in my mouth, when I returned, flushed with truck power, with new dreams and new hope. They named a ridiculously low sum, plus our wretched old bus. We shook hands all around. It was a bargain. I picked up Rose, spilled the good news, and we headed happily home. I drove back the next day, check in my shirt pocket, basically a check for all the money we had in the bank. About five blocks from their gas station car lot, there was a sudden loud bang. It came from the engine in the rear. The old VW staggered as if shot, then kept on rolling, though now in a halting, shuddering, groaning, wheezing sort of way. We limped up to the pump. I stopped and mercifully killed the engine, which gave out a final, long-drawn-out, lamenting gasp before it died. Except for the ticking of overheated metal, there was only silence. An awful silence. I sat on the peeling leather seat waiting for the smoke to clear. From the haze of my mind rose a helpless, anguished refrain. Up the creek without a paddle, no truck, not even the old van now. Cash low, baby coming. The two elderly gents had watched my stricken, labored approach. They rose from their chairs and stepped forward. Well, they said, you brought the bus. Do you have the check? Yes, I do. You'll still take it? I asked, incredulous. A deal's a deal, they answered. You don't want more money? I asked in a daze. Nope, said the Bodhisattvas. Feverishly, I pulled the crumpled check from my pocket, signed it, and handed it over before they could change their minds. We finished up the paperwork and again shook hands all around. Then I drove off in that heavenly blue, the color of Vaisyaja Guru Buddha, the Buddha of healing, Yakushi in Japanese, GMC truck, which not long after I drove serenely and safely and reliably down twisting mountain roads in a heavy fog in the middle of the night, so Jake could be born with one push in the local hospital of Susquehanna, PA. 8 weeks after that, we loaded all our possessions into our big blue truck and moved to Rochester for the Zen Center. The truck was later named the Rafe Mobile by the Zen Center, which acquired it from us a year later. They got many further years of sturdy yeoman service from it. It ran and ran as if it possessed a good, stout heart under its huge blue hood, and not the mere mechanical assemblage of an engine. It ran as if blessed. Thinking back, I've sometimes wondered what I would have found if I'd gone back to that used car lot and gas station. Would I have found just an empty field? Wind rippling through long grasses, no cars, flags, banners, pumps, no old gents in overalls. Maybe all gone, entirely gone, as the Prajna Paramita Sutra says. Vast emptiness, yet like mind itself, filled with endless potential. Are bodhisattvas really real? At an appropriate point in our practice, a Zen teacher may ask, what is the age of Kannon? Or he or she may challenge us with the question, where does Manjushri, Bodhisattva of wisdom, live now? As we continue on with our practice, sometimes clearer, sometimes duller, we begin to be able to offer answers that may both surprise and delight us. At the same time, they remind us of how much work we have yet to do, how far there is to go. Great bodhisattvas may be all around us. Regardless, our job remains to embody our own bodhisattva vows, minor as they may presently be, and each day do our best to make them that much more real. That great ongoing effort always begins intimately again from the very beginning, actualized with this very breath, this very count, this very vast and timeless